Obsession begins quietly. It does not announce itself as desire or even as love. It starts with uncertainty, with the unanswered question, with the silence that lingers longer than comfort allows. And once planted, it grows into something far stronger than attraction. It becomes control. Niccolò Machiavelli never used the word obsession, but he described it clearly. Men are driven by two forces, he wrote, love and fear. But there is something deeper, something more binding, obsession. Love fades, fear shifts, but obsession rewires a person's life. Carl Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. Obsession exploits this truth. It offers an escape from inner emptiness by turning the other person into the answer, the distraction, the mirror. And because the mind hates puzzles left unsolved, it keeps circling back again and again. Think of how it works. If you are too available, people feel safe, even bored. Certainty kills curiosity. But if you withdraw, delay, and remain unpredictable, the brain begins to fixate. It cannot rest until it solves the riddle of you. The obsession begins not with what you give, but with what you withhold. Nietzsche once observed, the mind loves what it cannot fully grasp. This is why obsession thrives in contradiction. You show warmth, then coldness. You reveal fragments of vulnerability, then hide them behind indifference. You create intimacy, then pull away. Each gesture incomplete, each signal half-finished. The mind obsesses not over what it understands, but over what it almost understands. Psychologists call this intermittent reinforcement. It is the same principle that keeps gamblers at a slot machine. Reward arrives unpredictably, and so the craving never ends. A message delayed, a glance that could mean passion or calculation. Praise offered once, then silence. This unpredictability hijacks the brain's reward system, creating a loop that feels impossible to escape. Jung also warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The person caught in obsession does not realize what is happening. They believe they are choosing, when in fact their unconscious wounds, abandonment, rejection, insecurity, are being pulled like strings. Obsession does not invent their pain. It simply positions itself as the one who understands it. This is why obsession feels like healing even when it is not. When someone listens without judgment, sees what others overlook, acknowledges the hidden parts, we feel chosen. We begin to confuse the presence of another with the relief of being seen. And once that connection forms, walking away feels like losing a part of ourselves. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." In the same way, the greatest power is not to demand loyalty, but to create a space where loyalty becomes irresistible. True obsession is never requested, it is provoked. It is not built through noise but through silence. Not through certainty but through mystery. This is the first principle. Obsession is born not from abundance but from scarcity, from the pause before the reply, from the look that cannot be decoded, from the presence that is always felt but never fully possessed. And once it takes root, obsession becomes the quiet chain, the chain no one sees, yet the strongest one of all. Presence is powerful, but absence often burns deeper. The human mind cannot tolerate a vacuum. It rushes to fill the silence with imagination, stories, and longing. And in that empty space, obsession multiplies. Carl Jung once said, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people." Silence forces us to meet our own darkness. When someone withdraws or leaves us unanswered, we are left alone with the echoes of our insecurities. The silence becomes a mirror reflecting not only them but us. And that reflection can be unbearable. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this dynamic in politics. He knew that rulers who appeared rarely seemed more powerful than those constantly present. Scarcity creates value. Too much presence breeds familiarity, and familiarity breeds contempt. But absence, controlled, deliberate absence, creates hunger. Nietzsche observed, "The value of a thing sometimes lies not in what one attains with it, but in what one pays for it." When someone withholds their presence, the cost of their attention rises. Every message, every gesture, every word becomes significant. The less available they are, the more valuable they appear. Psychologists describe this as the Zeigarnik effect, our tendency to fixate on what is incomplete. A story half told, a conversation left unfinished, a reply that never arrives. The mind cannot let it go. Instead, it replays, reimagines, rehearses. Absence turns into a stage where imagination performs endlessly. This is why silence is never truly silent. It is filled with the noise of anticipation, of doubt, of longing. And in relationships, this noise can be louder than any word spoken. Carl Jung warned, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." In absence, the unconscious takes over. Every old wound surfaces: abandonment, rejection, unworthiness. We think we are reacting to another person's silence, but we are actually reacting to our own shadow. The obsession is not with them alone, but with the unresolved parts of ourselves that their absence awakens. Consider how powerfully this works in social dynamics. The one who always explains, always replies, always fills the space, loses gravity. The one who withholds, who pauses, who disappears, creates tension. That tension is interpreted as depth, mystery, even superiority. And so, absence becomes presence magnified. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength." Silence, when held calmly, radiates power. It suggests choice, control, restraint, whereas constant reaction suggests need. The ability to remain absent without anxiety is often the mark of hidden authority. This is the paradox of human psychology. We crave closeness, but we are fascinated by distance. Too much closeness dulls desire. But distance, when intentional, sharpens it to a point. Silence becomes the spark. Absence becomes the fire. So remember this: if presence draws attention, absence deepens it. If words provoke thought, silence prolongs it. If availability satisfies, mystery obsesses. Obsession does not grow where everything is explained. It grows in the silence between words, in the gaps between appearances, in the absence that forces the mind to imagine what it cannot see. And once imagination takes over, reality is no longer the limit. The empty space becomes more powerful than presence itself. We are drawn not only to what we desire, but even more powerfully to what we cannot have. The human mind has always been fascinated by the unreachable. It is the distant mountain, the closed door, the withheld answer that fuels obsession more than anything freely given. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." And one of the ways we avoid ourselves is by pursuing the unattainable. We convince ourselves that happiness lies in the chase, in the prize just out of reach. But what we are really chasing is not the other, it is the distraction from our own emptiness. Nietzsche observed, "The value of all things lies not in themselves, but in the amount of labor required to obtain them." This is the law of scarcity. The harder something is to reach, the more we inflate its worth. It is not always about the object itself. It is about the struggle, the resistance, the denial. Desire is sharpened not by possession, but by prohibition. Think about how quickly desire fades once something is secured. The relationship that felt like fire cools into routine. The item you longed for gathers dust. The opportunity that seemed life-changing becomes ordinary once it is yours. This is the tragedy of desire. Once attained, it loses the very energy that made it feel vital. Psychologists call this the scarcity principle. We overvalue what is rare, what is withheld, what is almost but not quite within reach. And so, when someone makes themselves difficult to attain, through distance, mystery, or resistance, they become magnetic. We confuse unavailability with value. We tell ourselves, if it is so hard to have, it must be worth more. Carl Jung also warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. When we chase the unattainable, we often believe it is destiny. We say, why do I always fall for those I can't have? But it is not fate. It is the unconscious repeating its script. We are drawn back again and again to the familiar pattern of longing, because longing distracts us from confronting our own shadow. Consider how powerful this becomes in human relationships. The partner who is always available is often taken for granted. The one who is elusive, who withholds affection or attention, becomes the focus of endless craving. It is not that they are inherently more valuable, it is that their absence magnifies their perceived worth. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Very little is needed to make a happy life, it is all within yourself." Yet the opposite lesson dominates our culture. We are told happiness is always elsewhere, in the next achievement, the next possession, the next person. And so we chase endlessly, never realizing the hunger is not for them, but for ourselves. This is the trap of the unattainable. It keeps us running, longing, burning for something that cannot satisfy. And in the process, we miss the truth that the only fulfillment worth having is the one rooted within. So remember this. The unattainable is powerful not because of what it is, but because of what it awakens in us. It awakens hunger, obsession, projection. But once we see through it, once we recognize the pattern, we are no longer enslaved by it. Desire that cannot be fulfilled should not imprison you. It should teach you. It should reveal the shadow within you that clings to longing as a substitute for meaning. Because in the end, the greatest freedom is not in chasing what you cannot have, it is in no longer needing it to feel whole. People rarely fall in love with who you truly are. They fall in love with the version of you they create in their minds. It is not the depth of your soul they obsess over, it is the image, the projection, the illusion. Carl Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." When others look at you, they do not see you, they see their own unconscious reflected back. They project their desires, fears, and longings onto your surface. And if you are wise, you understand that their obsession has little to do with you, and everything to do with themselves. Niccolò Machiavelli knew the power of reputation. He advised rulers to guard their image fiercely, for perception often matters more than truth. To appear strong is as valuable as being strong. To appear generous is as effective as generosity itself. Reputation shapes reality because people act not on facts but on beliefs. Nietzsche once observed, "Sometimes people don't want to hear the truth because they don't want their illusions destroyed." This is why illusions are often more powerful than reality. People crave the story they've written about you more than they crave the truth of who you are. Destroy the illusion and their fascination may vanish. Maintain the illusion and their obsession deepens. Psychologists call this projection. When someone lacks wholeness within themselves, they project the missing pieces onto another person. If they crave strength, they see you as powerful. If they crave safety, they see you as a protector. If they crave mystery, they see you as unfathomable. It is not you they want, it is themselves hidden in you. Carl Jung explained that every relationship is also a mirror. What we see in others is often the unacknowledged part of our own psyche. This is why people obsess over reputations, celebrities, or ideals they barely know. The image is a canvas, and they paint their unconscious across it. Consider how this plays out in power. The politician who cultivates a reputation for decisiveness inspires loyalty, even if behind closed doors he is uncertain. The leader who appears unshakable maintains authority, even if fear gnaws at him privately. Reputation becomes armor, a mask that protects and manipulates at the same time. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." And yet, the world rarely cares about who you are. It cares about who you appear to be. This is the paradox. Inner integrity is essential for peace, but external reputation is what drives influence. The most powerful figures throughout history mastered this duality. They lived one truth privately and projected another publicly. And people obsessed not with the person, but with the projection. The mask became more captivating than the man. So what does this mean for you? It means understanding that obsession is rarely personal. People do not become fixated on your reality, they become addicted to the story they tell about you. And if you are wise, you will not rush to correct them. You will let the illusion do its work, because obsession does not live in truth. It lives in the gap between reality and perception. And when you manage that gap carefully, you hold a power far greater than honesty alone could ever give. The deepest form of influence is not in words, persuasion, or explanation. It is in presence. When your very being carries weight, you no longer need to defend, justify, or chase approval. People feel it without knowing why. Carl Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Presence is born when you stop performing, stop bending, stop diluting yourself for acceptance. It emerges when you stand fully in who you are, unapologetically whole. And that wholeness radiates outward as authority. Niccolo Machiavelli observed that rulers who spoke too often in their own defense weakened their stature. Explaining lowers you to the level of the accuser. But the leader who stays silent, who lets presence do the speaking, commands more fear and more respect than words ever could. Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." Presence comes from clarity of purpose. When you know your why, you carry yourself differently. Every gesture, every pause, every silence communicates certainty. And certainty is magnetic. Think of the rare people who walk into a room and change the atmosphere without saying a word. Their presence silences chatter, commands attention, and unsettles the insecure. They do not explain themselves, yet everyone wants their approval. They do not chase, yet people chase them. This is presence, power without effort, authority without noise. Carl Jung also warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. When you do the inner work, facing your shadow, owning your contradictions, you stop living reactively. You no longer need the validation of others to feel whole. And paradoxically, the moment you stop chasing validation, people offer it freely. Because they sense what they cannot shake, you are already complete. Presence is the opposite of neediness. Need explains. Need justifies. Need performs. Presence simply is. And because it is rare, it becomes irresistible. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." Presence follows the same principle. Do not argue for your value. Do not explain your worth. Be it. And the world will adjust around you. This is why presence creates obsession. When you explain yourself, people understand you. and understanding ends curiosity. But when you remain steady, calm, and unshakable, people are left wondering. Their imagination works overtime, filling the silence with stories, projections, and longing. The less you chase them, the more they chase you. So remember this. Presence is not noise, but silence. Not performance, but authenticity. Not chasing, but standing. And when you master it, you no longer need to demand respect or affection. Both come naturally, drawn by the gravity of who you are. Carl Jung was right. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And once you embody that truth fully, your presence becomes your greatest power. Not because you force it, but because you no longer need to. In the end, obsession does not cling to explanations. It clings to mystery, to depth, to presence. And when you live as your true self, whole and unshaken, you will find that your very existence is enough to command both respect and fascination.